Hello.
Yeah, hi.
Okay.
So we're ready.
Hello. Can you hear
Hello.
me?
Yeah,
Good. Do you see my screen?
yeah.
Good. So are we good to get started?
Um, yeah, let me just.
I think I can see 6 viewers online. You are welcome. For all those who have joined us for today's webinar, you are most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So David, should we get started?
Yes, we are live. We can start.
Good. Thank you once again for joining us today. This is our second edition of the Data Science webinar. And today, following feedback from the previous sessions, we have decided to go a bit deeper, going into something more tangible as we requested the last time. So we want to go into exploring the health facilities data set so that you get to see some of the technologies at play. I think after this session, you'll be able to have a feel of some visualizations and some basic analysis in notebooks, for example. Okay, so welcome once again. If you have any questions, the tradition goes on that you can ask your questions in the comments, and then David, who is also online with me, will read out your questions, and then we will answer them as we go along. Any other housekeeping rules? Just feel free to ask questions. If you have any inputs to make as well, feel free to make your inputs. Welcome to Data Science Webinar 2, Exploring Ghana's Health Facility Dataset. And it's presented to you by Emmanuel Asimedi, co-hosted by David.
Yeah, welcome on board.
Yeah. Okay, so in today's session, we'll be looking at the health facilities dataset. This is a data set that has been published to the open data portal by the Ministry of Health. It contains a listing of all the health facilities in Ghana. The open data portal hosts a number of data sets, and we have decided to look at the health facilities data set as a first example of what we can do with open data in the space of data science. In this series, I'll get to show you what we are doing with a Citizen Data Science project. And you see our workflow and how we intend to use such data to bring up new information and make impact. We'll then go further to explore this data set in a visualization in Tableau. And you'll see some interesting findings by just exploring the data set in Tableau. And I think there are other visualization tools. Some people talk about Looker, we talk about Click. There is also Power BI. So you can feel free to use any of those. But for this visualization, we are using Tableau. And you also, I hope you find it interesting and easy to use for your own applications. After visualizing the data and exploring the data set, we go to the third session where we try to use our understanding of the data set to make the data set better, to sort of see some mistakes. In our exploration, we'll see some errors in the data set. And I'm using the opportunity to sort of to create a scenario where we have to curate the data or clean the data. And I'll use that opportunity to show you the development environment called Jupyter Notebooks, for those who are not familiar with it. Jupyter Notebooks are just a very interesting and easy to use development environment, very suited for those who are learning and for those who want to do research. Some workflows allow you to also do production grade development in the Jupyter Notebook. So for those who are not familiar with it and those who get back to us asking the question of how do I get started with data science, I'm hoping that this gives you an idea of a very simple way of you getting started and almost starting by yourself without the help of any other person or any book. And then we'll end with a recap of what we've learned through the session. We'll take a couple of questions, and then I have a bonus slide for you as well. So this is what we'll be talking about for today. I'm hoping that we'll be able to take it through 45 minutes and have a lot of time for questioning. Okay. Okay, so if you recall our last slide, we talked about the Citizen Data Science Project and the workflows we have enabled. The goal of this project is to use data, open data, for social good and also for the purpose of learning. Our workflow is to first call for data. So we ask for data like the health facility data sets, like the election data set, and all sorts of data. And then we curate the data, sort of explore and clean the data for the community's use. So we want to have a set of data that is interesting for Ghana, okay? And our goal is to host the best-in-class data set for each domain. So for example, we have this health facilities data set, for example. We have taken it from the open data portal, but the added value we give it is the fact that we are able to curate it and always keep an updated and clean version of the data set for anybody who wants to use it for analysis. And we entreat and encourage people to sort of try to publish this sort of such clean data to our portal, okay? So that for Ghana, we know that all data about Ghana will exist in one place for analysis, for active analysis. So if you talk about election data, if you talk about maybe satellite data, and a list of other data sets in our inventory, I think if you go to our GitHub repo, you see a list of data sets we are interested in. We are interested in crime data and a whole host of other data sets. When this matures, you have one place that hosts all the data sets we are interested in. And you can go there, download the data set, or switch on a notebook and do your own kind of analysis with it. And with the advent of Google enabling data search, such data sets will even be searchable via Google. Okay, so our call to duty here is to encourage people to help us find interesting data sets and publish them. And also, for those who are interested in exploring and learning, feel free to visit our Kaggle Citizen Dataset Ghana and have a feel of the sort of data sets we have. Switch on a Kaggle kernel and explore it for yourself. So back to our substantive subject matter for today. We want to explore Ghana's health facility data set. We took this data set from the Open Data Portal. We published it to Kaggle. Our choice of Kaggle is because they have 20 gig of free storage for us to put our data set, and also has the technology to sort of allow us to attach to this data set and explore the data set online. So to explore this data set online on Kaggle, you only need your minimal laptop, and Kaggle will provide its own computing environment for you to work and explore the data set. Now, what we have done in this exploration is to explore the data set in Tableau, and you'll see this visualization shortly. Okay, so if you recall our previous session, we described some kind of a spectrum of analytics, okay, where we mentioned that when you move from the left to the right, you are getting more complex and you are getting more value from your analysis. Okay, so we mentioned that there's the descriptive analysis that talks about what happened. We talked about the diagnosis that talked about why it happened. We talked about predictive. We talked about prescriptive. And we sort of challenge each other to ask ourselves the question, where does our organization sit in this spectrum? I think most of us would agree that a lot of organizations sit in between the descriptive and diagnostic. Why I'm sharing this slide again as a reminder is for us to sort of decide where will the exploration of the Ghana Health Facilities dataset sit in this spectrum. And I think I'll leave that for those online to answer. And let's see whether we have people who still remember our explanation to our explanation of some of these concepts, whether you are getting familiar with some of these concepts. So David, if you have anybody answering, let me know. So the question is, we want to explore the Ghana Health Facilities dataset in Tableau. Such an analysis, which part of the spectrum will it sit?
Yeah, so that's the question. We want to find out from viewers
So I'll give you 1 minute to see if we get the answers, and then we proceed from there.
Yes, so please type your answers. We want to find out when will our analysis.
Where do you think the exploration of the Ghana Health Facilities data set will sit in this spectrum of analytics?
So I think the participants are not very.
Yeah, so yeah, okay. Yep.
So somebody, Chinedu said descriptive.
Yeah, Chinedu is almost always answering our questions first.
It seems to have some knowledge.
I think the last time, good. So,
Aqua said, I think we still sit in the descriptive stages.
Yes, that's very good. Very good.
Aqua,
yeah. So in a descriptive, so you will see that we will get, even in the descriptive stage, there is a lot of sophistication in what we can do, but we still know that there's not that's not the end of the value we can get from data, and we typically want to move forward. So my bringing in this slide is to sort of put our mind to which part of the spectrum we are sitting. So with all the complexities we are about to see, all the beautiful things we are about to see, we are still just at the basics of analysis. And I'm hoping that will also trigger your interest in wanting to go even further into stages of diagnostics and predictive stuff, and even to the prescriptive kind of analytics.
Yeah.
I'll pause here if anybody has a question.
So Paul is saying, as we talk of numbers such as 9 out of 10 pregnant women have malaria, and our reporting is mainly on averages, etc. We are still in. He said we are still in the descriptive
Very
phase.
good.
Peter
Yeah.
Aiti said he has written, said it's diagnostics.
Yeah,
but I think we all agree that we are currently in the descriptive phase.
Yes. So in a descriptive state, so this data set is all about hospitals and health facilities that exist in Ghana and where they are located and who owns these health facilities. Okay, so we are just going to explore the data set. We are not going to ask ourselves why something happened or why something exists in a certain state. Even if we do, it will not be too detailed. So we are more in descriptive than we are in diagnostics.
Great.
Okay, so moving forward, and thank you for your responses. We love your interactions. Yeah, so going forward, I think these links are very useful. I put them there so we can for citizen data science, we are interested in are in here.
Yeah.
Just to take you quickly to the portal. When it decides to open, I'll show that to you. The data sets that we are interested in are in this location. So this hosts all the data sets and whether we have actually found the data set and it is available online. I'll show you when it becomes available. Then we have the Kaggle portal where the data set actually lives. Good. Yeah. It's when you need it to open, that's when it slows down, right? So here, this is Kaggle, and this is where we host the data, okay? And this, when you go to the link I shared with you, you will see the health facility. And Kaggle has the two concepts. I think I'll use the opportunity to share with those who are not familiar with Kaggle. It has the concept of data sources or data sets, as you can see at the top here. And then an important concept of sets, like you would have already predicted, are just is the area where we store the different sets of data. Okay. And then the kernels are what we call notebooks or the programming environment which we use to analyze the data. Now, if we go straight to the data set, it's fairly straightforward. It contains you can see my screen.
Yes.
It contains the region. So you see Ashanti, blah, blah, blah. It contains the district. It contains the name of the facility.
Okay, can you share the link so people can open, because it's very small and people cannot see from the screen.
Okay. I'll do that shortly.
Drop it on the chat.
Okay. It's asking me to sign in. Yeah, so I'll be putting the link in there shortly. So you have the type.
Yeah.
You have the type. You have also the town, and then you have.
Have you been able to take the link?
Yeah, short. Just a second. You have the link. So we have the town, the ownership, and then the final we have is also the latitude and the longitude. Then Kaggle also tries to summarize this data nicely for us. Okay, so assuming you're doing something with this data set, you just come to either create a new notebook from the data set or fork the existing notebook. And with that, you have an existing notebook to get started with. For those who are not familiar with notebooks, we'll talk about it in a couple of slides.
Okay.
I'm still trying to share the chat, the link. Just a second, please.
All right. If it's difficult, you can drop it to me on WhatsApp and I'll put it there.
Yeah. So you have it. You should have it by now. It's just giving us the metadata around the data set we are interested in, region, district, blah, blah, blah. And you can create a notebook here. The notebook is just a development environment. And the beauty of notebooks is that the provider of the notebook, which is Kaggle or Google, is providing the backend, which is a very big machine by our standards. I think it has about 20 gig RAM and other interesting features. It also supports what we call GPU. So it's free to get started because you are just going to be programming in your browser. Now, let's go to itself. What you see now is the visualization in Tableau.
Did you share the link?
Yes, I've shared it. Ooh.
Oh,
What you see, I'm sharing the link in.
I'm going to put it in the chat.
Try to freeze. I'll get the link out there. So what you see here currently is the data, the health facilities data set. And we have to your left the regions and the number of facilities in each region. And it's color coded from region that has the least number of facilities, which is the Upper West region. It has 161 facilities. And the region that has the highest number of facilities, which is 58, which is the Ashanti region. So you see by region how many have. Out here we have the type of facility and the percentage of those facilities in our infrastructure. So you could already start seeing that clinics are the largest set of facilities we have.
Okay, so for those who cannot see the picture clearly, please turn on your YouTube to full screen. It will be better. Full screen. All right, you can go ahead.
Okay. Now, if you want to also have a live view of this visualization, you can just search Tableau. Tableau Data Nix or DS for good. You should have that there. Okay, so next of facilities, about that in a minute. And we also know that there are 3,756 different kinds of facilities in the country. And of all the types of facilities color coded nicely here. And then here we've tried to arrange by their districts. Say there's Adansi North, and there are this number of health centers, and then there is I think this is a purple one, which is a training institution. So given, you can almost see the different kinds of health facilities that exist in those districts. Okay, so let's just do something interesting. And if you see this data set and you think there's an interesting question to ask, you can bring it up. But to get started, clinics are the most number of facilities. We can click on clinics.
So how many clinics do we have? We have 269 clinics.
When you click on clinics and you see the total, we have 1,171 clinics. I think the visualization is still updating, so you'll see it shortly. Let me only clinics highlighted.
Okay, so this clinic only highlighted, so we can see cluster of clinics up north, upper east, I guess.
Exactly.
But fewer clinics in upper west.
Very good. Yeah. So this is how clinics are distributed across the country.
But there are some areas where there are no clinics at all.
Yes. So we can argue that there are possibly other health facilities there that make up for clinics. But its picture is just the beginning. Okay. It's just the beginning of understanding our health infrastructure. And I think when we publish more data about this, we can now start thinking about how people have access to clinics or a particular class of health facilities. So we can decide to say that for every square kilometer, there should be a clinic, for example. Or for every X dimension, there should be a health facility that is not a basic one. Okay, so this is just the distribution of clinics, for example. There are also some other interesting health facilities. When you click on hospitals, we see how hospitals are distributed in the country. There is also the maternity homes. Yeah, I think I'll take that. And this is how maternity homes are distributed across the country as well. So you can, this is just to show you that it's quite straightforward thing to start questioning the data and doing some kind of advanced analysis of the data in Tableau once you have the
let me
sheet
just,
set up.
there's a question here. I still think the data needs further clinic. Do you have that for districts? I am interested in seeing clinics in Gomoa West.
Okay, so Gomoa West, for example, is in the central region or western. Where is it? Central region.
Gomoa is in.
Let's try central region. I think Gomoa sounds like a central regional.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's see whether.
Yeah, it's central.
Yeah, so Gomoa West. Here you are with Gomoa West. I will just enable us. So Central Region has 65 clinics in all. Has 2 clinics. Mankwazi Clinic and then Noguchi Clinic. So it's up to you to tell us whether this matches reality. But the beginning of this is the first step. When we put the data in this structure, we can now begin to ask whether this is a true reflection of reality. And we can now begin to see what sort of data sets are interesting to host to make this data more valuable. Okay. One interesting data set to host to make this valuable, I think, is population. And it tells us per area or per area of population, what facilities are serving these groups of people. And we look forward to having people venturing into this area to sort of help us answer these kind of questions and publish the findings. I think that some interesting finding will be to say that maybe in the upper west region, they seem to be too deprived because their population is so large and there is only one facility, for example, and stuff like that. So in combining it with other data sets, we increase the value of the analysis and the information we can get from it.
Okay.
Yeah. Then
so
for those who are curious,
the data will not stand on its own. You use other data to analyze and see whether it makes sense.
Yes, to sort of get more value from the data set.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here we are just forming an understanding of the infrastructure we have. And it's also quite exploratory. And this leads to further questions, and then we get more value from the data. Those who are curious, like somebody I know, they will start asking questions why some hospitals are in the sea.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of facilities in the sea. These are erroneous data points, and I'll try to show you how we can correct this using Google Maps API. If you recall, in our last session, we talked about APIs enabling new ways for applications to communicate.
Yeah.
In this use case, we are going to sort of call an external service, which is living in Google, to help us correct the GPS coordinates of these points. And you see, it's an interesting use case because it means that in your own organization, you now have the capability to go and get external data into your internal analysis. And that is not trivial, it's powerful. Okay, so for those in, say, telecom, for example, when customers complain or when you have to geolocalize stuff, you can call this API and sort of translate the name of a place into a GPS coordinate. And that makes your analysis more precise and more like gives more context to your analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there is also some interesting I'd like to show you before we leave the interface. There is where is that guy? Psychiatric. That's what I want to show you.
Yeah.
Let's see, for psychiatric hospitals, they are all down south. And there are 3 of them.
Yeah. For those who cannot see clearly, please turn on full screen.
Yep. And there are 3 psychiatric hospitals down south in Ghana. And so we might say that maybe there are some bigger hospitals that provide care, but are not listed as psychiatric hospitals as well.
So do you have in Ashanti region?
No, we don't. There's no hospital or health facility listed in the Ashanti region. So the question is if we have any psychiatric hospital in Ashanti region.
So the one down south.
The one down south.
Ankafo.
Yes, Ankafo. You have one in 37, and then the popular one, I'm hoping, is Pantine.
Yeah.
Accra, there's Accra Psychiatric Hospital.
Yes.
So there are 3 of them listed in this data set. But I think the goal of this exploration is just to show you around Tableau and its capabilities and how powerful it is in slicing and dicing data. There is also, and I would show you, when I click upper east, you have a certain class of data, a certain class of facilities called others. So these are the types of facilities, clinics, CHIPS compounds, training institutions. But the Upper East region seems to have a certain class of facilities that are called others. And they are in, we would look at them in detail and try to make this better, because with these facilities should have a better name than others. And when you click on it, you have the capability of seeing the details. By right-clicking, you can see the details. Ooh. It's taking some time. Yeah. And you can see all the facilities that are others. And it's still exhibiting the power of the analytics we are doing. By right-clicking, we have a drill down capability already. Okay, and this is public and this is free. It's something you can try on your own, and it's something you can explore by yourself. But you can see already that these facilities that are classed as others A lot of them are feeding centers, supplementary feeding center, blah, blah, blah. And this is following from analysis I've done with Hisham, who is part of the community. You see that most of them are feeding centers. You would think that Ghana is quite advanced, but there's nutrition problem. You can sort of infer that there's some kind of nutrition problem we are dealing with up there. And so there are all these facilities that have been classed as others that are actually feeding centers. Okay,
So
I would prefer.
Are they also considered as health facilities?
Yeah, as they are in the data set, I think they qualify to be health facilities. And I would prefer to call them feeding centers rather than call them others.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the sort of improvements we make to the data set so that future users of this data set will not have to worry about the accuracy of the data set, or they can be assured that the data set is the best in class. The data set we are hosting is the best in class. I'll pause for questions.
Yes.
So it just clicks and you can do all the slicing and dicing that is interesting to you. So there's a question of how often it is updated. And this data set is in the opendata.gov portal. The last time they updated it, if I remember right, was in 2016. I think with the way we are set up, exploring the data set and trying to give more value to the data set for social good, it is an incentive for such organizations to want to publish more data sets.
Yeah.
And we hope that government institutions that are custodians of important data would start publishing data sets to the open data portal for such analysis and for us to put it to good use for society.
Yeah. So
that's a good question.
How many teaching hospitals do we have now?
Good question. Yeah. So I'll click and then try to look for, how would they call them? Would they call them teaching hospitals? Okay. Yeah, I have that. Now, how will I find this? Okay, so you have 3 teaching hospitals, and they are quite well geographically located. One in Accra, I think one in Ashanti, and one up north. So there are 3 hospitals.
Yeah, somebody wants to know the URL for the open data.
Yeah, so the URL for the open data is on Kaggle. You go to citizen-ds Ghana. I'll share this in the YouTube link after the webinar.
Okay.
So there we go. With the Tableau visualizer too. We go back to our slides. Yeah. And so we have managed to explore the health facilities data set. Even though it was brief, I think you can find your way around it. Okay, now let's say we want to make that data set better. And this is a new kind of question. We finished exploring the data set. We found some hospitals in the sea, and we want to rectify the geographic coordinates, the wrong geographic coordinates, for example. We saw some hospitals classed as others, and we think a better name for that type of hospital is a feeding center. Those are two things we want to do to improve. So we will do this using Jupyter Notebooks. And I'm using this opportunity to introduce Jupyter Notebooks because after our first webinar, we got a lot of the questions, people trying to find out how do I get started. And I think Jupyter Notebooks are an interesting place to get started. So there are a number of free notebook environments that exist for anybody who is interested in getting started. There's the Kaggle one, and I've tried to capture for you some of the interesting parameters of this environment. So Kaggle is free, as you can see, on an R, and then you can host 20 gig of data. There's Microsoft Azure. This environment is also interesting. Most of these environments provide example code for you to get started as well. So they are interesting in the fact that notebooks themselves are easy to get started with. You can have code, you can have explanation to the code, you can have visualization all in one place in your browser. And you don't need any special machine to get started. That's what makes notebooks interesting. And these guys provide free notebook environments for you to get started. So you can check them out.
Okay, somebody wants to know how you can get Tableau.
Yes, Tableau Public is free. So when you go to Tableau Public website, you have the capability of downloading a free version, a free desktop version. So with that, you can visualize data from CSV files. You cannot save your visualizations on your machine, but you can save them to the public. So the limitation is that all your visualizations will be saved to Tableau Public, and you have a nice profile where you can be sharing your visualization like a social media kind of thing. So I think for those who are interested in visualization, I will encourage you to download Tableau Public and play around with it. If you find some interesting data you want to share, do nice visualizations and share it on your profile. When you go to the Tableau gallery as well, people do very nice visualizations, and you can use that to inspire you to do more complex stuff. And I also say that once you start with this kind of ideas and following on from ideas of the community, it has some kind of ripple effect on what you do in your own organization as well, because it opens your mind to see data in a new light. Sometimes publishing data or visualizing data is not just sharing information. It becomes like an artwork that allows people to engage more with the visualization and also learn or acquire information from the visualization. So you are doing art and then you are communicating information as well. So the new kinds of visualizations are very interesting. They are not just sharing data, but they are sharing data in very engaging and beautiful ways.
Yeah. We said in the last conversation that visualization seems to be very popular. So it means that those who want to go into visualization, they need to be looking at Tableau.
Yes. Yeah. So Tableau is interesting. Power BI is also interesting because they have their public versions. I don't know of Click and Looker. Okay. So I get it that you are familiar with the notebooks. Now, the two problems we talk about, we are going to solve them in the notebook environment. Okay. So in this example, I decided to use the Google Collaboratory notebook. And you'll see that shortly. Okay, so this environment, and I think it works on the concept of cells. Okay, so everything you do exists in a certain cell. I just wanted to share with you. So let's see. So you can add a cell, and cells allow you to write code, okay, and execute them independently, sort of. So this is a very iterative way of coding, in that you can just write one line and run it and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fairly straightforward. So when I introduce the cell and I connect to the machine at the back end by clicking connect on the left, I'm doing a live session now. I'm connecting to a machine which is running Python 3, for example.
Okay.
Okay. And then I introduce a new cell, and I can just say, in this cell, let's use Python to do 2 + 2, for example, and I run it. You can use your keys to run it, or just click on run here. It will run. And give you the output there, 4. This is an environment where you can just play around and not fear breaking anything. Okay. Sometimes if you have complex code and you want to understand it, you can almost come and go through the code line by line in this environment. Now, when you are done running it, you can keep introducing new cells. And the new cell is independent of the previous cell. So in this cell, I can choose to do 1 + 1. And this is how the philosophy of notebooks are. You can include text in your analysis. As you can see, it is using, you can see here, I've put in text. So here I'm importing data from Kaggle into this environment. And I am putting the text there. It's using what we call Markdown. It's a syntax that is just like HTML, but it's a simpler form of HTML. And you can just write your headings, write explanation to your code in the same environment as where you are writing your code. Okay, so in this notebook environment, there are things we want to do. We want to bring in the data set, uncategorized facilities, and then we want to consume an external API. This is particularly interesting because it's fancy. It means you can bring in data in from Kaggle, from outside your organization to enrich internal data set within your organization. And you can do that with just an HTTP call, like you are browsing the internet. To this one by one, and let's inspect the data set. Okay, by clicking that, I've brought in the data set, and I've read the data set from Dix. Okay, so that's data, and I'm showing 10, the top 10, the top 10 rows of the data. And you can see it's the same data set we are familiar with. Is to find those data sets that have type others. And that's the condition we are putting here. When we do that, we filter out only the data sets that have type others, for example. And then we want to clean it. We want to clean the data. I think our task at the beginning of this session is to say that when the data set contains type other, and then we find feeding, nutrition, or rehabilitation inside the name of the facility, let's change the name to feeding center. That is more precise. And on one line of code, we have done that. Intuitively, you can almost read this and make sense out of it. This is the power of Python. Okay,
Yeah.
we are saying that find the column that contains feeding or nutrition or rehabilitation. Okay, and in the type column, put feeding center in there. And that's what we have done. And you can see the result. They are no longer adders, but for every place we see feeding center, rehabilitation center, we are calling it the type feeding center. And we are finished cleaning the data set.
Mm.
That is the power of Python, the power of the data structure called pandas in Python. I think last week we got the question whether you can use VB for data analysis. And I
Yes.
answered that it depends on whether you have the data structures that make you efficient or productive. And
Yes.
this is
So for unstructured data, you think Python is very important?
yes, Python is a very strong language because it has a lot of data structures and a lot of libraries that make us efficient in analyzing the data. And this is a typical use case where we have pandas giving us a tabular structure to analyze data. Are there any further questions?
How is data collected? Can I get to a clinic, take the coordinates, and share with the data warehouse?
Okay, that's
So
it. So
somebody
the
wants to
data,
know. Yeah.
yeah, the data currently is we are relying on data published by the Ministry of Health, but it makes sense if we want to enrich the data set, then we might rely on citizens to help us, which may not be trivial, it may be intensive.
Okay.
Yeah, but we are relying on data that has been published by the Ministry of Health. And you would expect that the Ministry of Health will have such data easily and keep
Yeah.
publishing it for the community.
Yeah.
And I think that the typical data custodians in the area of health is the Ministry of Health, and there is also the National Health Insurance Authority.
Yeah.
And if we have members that are working in these fields and can provide us open data, it's particularly interesting because on this, you want to see how people are using these health facilities, which of them are listed in the NHIS as service providers, so that we understand how people have access to the free healthcare we intend to give them. Okay. And the NHIA, which is the insurance authority, has a lot of information that should be public for interest groups to analyze and take decisions on. And when you publish it, people get better understanding of the infrastructure, and you can put in interventions that help the populace. You will do that efficiently and not blindly when we have the right amount of data. Okay, then we go to the second problem we wanted to solve. So here we wanted to clean up the coordinates in the sea. And this is particularly interesting because we are going to call Google. We are going to sort of query Google with the name of the town. For those towns in the sea, for those facilities in the sea, sorry, we want to just, instead of using the coordinates that are in the sea, we want to call Google to give us the coordinates of the towns of those health facilities. And we just use the towns as the coordinates of the health facility instead of the wrong coordinates that are in the sea.
Yeah.
Okay. Where Google is not able to translate the town into coordinates, we want to say that um, it should just resolve it to the region. So we know that all these wrong coordinates are occurring in the central region. So where Google is not able to resolve the wrong coordinate, just approximate it to be in the central region so that we don't have any coordinates in the sea. Okay, so we have created a function that takes the name of the town and then outputs the coordinates for us. And that is how you call an API. I thought I had an example here. Yeah, so what we have done here is to list all the health facilities in the sea. Okay, we took it from the Tableau visualization.
Yeah.
And then we now these facilities to our function. Okay, so in this cell, what we are doing in this cell, what we are doing is to say that give us the town names of all the facilities in the sea. And we pass it to our function coordinates. And that function reads of the town. And that's what you see in our final data frame. You remember our original data frame ended in latitude and longitude. Now we have a new data frame that contains the new locations, which are locations hopefully not in the sea, but at least approximated to the town to which the health facility exists in. So for this one, for example, Christie Maternity Home in the sea, we have resolved its GPS coordinate to Senya Breku, which is fair and which is okay. Now there is also the instance where the name of the town was not provided. Because we know whatever the case is, this facility is in Ewutu Senya and it's in the central region, we say that just approximate it to the central region. So all the grains you see highlighted here are places where we could not retrieve the correct coordinates, and we decided to use the central region to populate the data. And you see how we have been able to call an external service that exists in Google to enrich our internal analysis. And I'm hoping if you don't take anything away from this webinar at all, you have this new capability to know that you can access external services. Okay, these external services, which we call APIs, can be data, but they don't necessarily data. They could be any other machine learning model that is outside of your organization, and you can call it to bring information or analysis into your organization. So a typical use case would be to call Microsoft Azure's sentiment analysis on text. So you don't need to build the sentiment analysis model. You just send the text to Microsoft Azure and it will come back with the sentiment of your text. In other use cases, you can send a video to an API and it will come back with the analysis of the video. Or you can send picture to an external API back whether the picture contains a human being or the emotions of the human being in the picture. So this tells you the power of APIs and their capability of enriching your analysis within your organization. So I'll pause there for any questions. And I know we have exhausted our 1 hour.
Yeah.
Final round of questions, and then we call it a day.
Yeah, so please, if you have any questions, please drop them. And let's discuss.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, when you go back to the data set,
Yeah.
so the data we have, its accuracy depends on the data input for the data we got
Yes.
from
Yeah.
the open data source.
Yes, from the data provider. Yes. The accuracy of the data. So the question is, how reliable is the data, or the accuracy of the data? And it all depends on the data provider.
Yeah.
So we are hoping that
what percentage of accuracy is acceptable? That will not be
that's
that
a
will
good
not be
question.
misleading.
That will not be what?
Misleading.
Yeah, good question. Yeah. So I think we in this sort of analysis, we just have to understand that it is just a best effort.
Yeah.
So in the absence of a better data set, we will trust this data set as much as we can.
Okay.
But we have to know that there can be errors in it.
Yeah.
And when we find those errors, we'll keep improving it. Yeah, but we need to understand that this is a best effort publication and we can expect errors.
Yeah. Are there no
Okay.
other questions? Should we be wrapping up?
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap up.
We should wrap up. Okay, so thank you once again for, and fortunately we have done our typical expected 1 hour. In this session, we looked at the Ghana Health Facilities data set. We
Yeah.
explored it in a Tableau visualization. And we also have made mention of the fact that we have created a platform that we are naming the Citizen Data Science Project, where we publish all these data sets into Kaggle for people who are interested in analyzing it or visualizing it, to have access to these rich data sets in one place and visualize it in Tableau or Power BI. Or if you are just interested in doing analysis, more detailed analysis on this data set in Kaggle in a notebook environment, you can see the sort of rich analysis and complex analysis you can do in this in such environment. We also mentioned that with all the value you see in this analysis is just at the beginning of the spectrum, or the analytic spectrum, which is the descriptive phase of the analysis. But you can already start feeling the value we get from it. And I think the highlight for me in analyzing the data in such environments is the fact that you can connect to external APIs and bring in data into your organization and enrich your internal data, either from data sources or from external algorithms that you may not have to worry about building yourself. And the final one is for you to see that there are a number of notebook environments that you can take advantage of, and you don't need to bother installing stuff. You can just start and get going with examples in this environment. And we listed Google Collaboratory, we listed Kaggle, we listed Azure notebook environments as example of notebook environments that come free of charge with big machines behind them for you to use for your learning and research. So
Okay,
thank
great.
you very much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed this session. Feel
Yes,
free to leave
thank you
comments.
very much, Emmanuel. We really enjoyed this session. We looking forward to getting you back again for other sessions where we'll discuss into details people who wants to take this path. One of the areas we are looking at is getting training in Python, as we have observed in this presentation also, that it becomes very useful and comes in handy for those who want to manipulate the data and get the best result out of it. So our Python class will be starting on the 6th of October here in Accra, East Legon.
That's
I will
very
share the
interesting.
details. We'll share the details with you in the coming week.
Yeah.
It will be a 1-month program, 4 Saturdays, for those who want to just get quick training in Python that will aid their data science journey.
Yeah. So like I told you I had a bonus slide. The last slide is a bonus slide that tells you gives you some kind of a knowledge map of the different knowledge areas and interesting books or resources that can help you in these knowledge areas. So you see, I've listed SQL, I've listed Python, I've listed other interesting topics that sort of give you the technical know-how to practice in the area of data science. So you them out as well.
Yeah, it's yet to come on the other screen. And
You probably need to refresh, maybe.
yeah.
So it's a blue slide that has a listing of all the knowledge areas or my organization of the knowledge areas in data science. And for anybody who is interested, you can use this as a blueprint to organize your learning.
Yeah. So we have the SQL, we have the Python,
Yes.
and other ones.
Yes. So yeah, so these different knowledge areas almost lead into separate big paths or learning paths. And I think as we go along, we'll flesh it out and have people who are interested in the different learning paths to get going. And I hope you enjoy your journey in the subject area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so bye-bye. I get to show my face before we leave the presentation.
Yeah.